Hey there, I'm the Spicy Wolf. I'm an English major who somehow ended up writing video game stories for almost 7 years. Now, it looks like I'm stuck inside this yellow room, and to pass the time, I talk about important video games. For my second entry in this series, I'll be covering something more gameplay focused. In my previous video, I talked about Psychonauts and how great it was at blending both gameplay and narrative. In the same video though, I also pointed out that not all games need to do this to be considered artistic or relevant. After all, a video game is meant to be played first and foremost. No shit, Sherlock. But all I'm trying to say here is that a video game, at its core, should be interacted with and have systems in place that make it fun and engaging no matter how simple or complex those systems are. This is why I'm picking something more gameplay focused for today. There's definitely a lot of great titles out there, but there's one game, or franchise in particular, that I'd like to talk about. It's a franchise that has caught the hearts and minds of millions of gamers across the globe. It's a franchise that paved the way for the life sim genre while still sitting at its throne, mostly untouched. That franchise is none other than The Sims. Now I understand that The Sims might be a contentious title for this list. After all, it's owned by a company known for its predatory consumer practices. A quick glance at The Sims 4 Steam page reveals a lot about the state of the game and where the franchise is headed. And for those with a keen eye, it is not looking good. But hear me out, my dear spicy viewers. I was there 2 decades ago and witnessed the birth of The Sims. I grew up in a mythical time when gaming was mostly untouched by the green and wrinkled hand of corporate greed. It was the gaming boom of the early 2000s, and it was a mythical time when games carefully laid down their foundations with the hopes of becoming the titans of today. The Sims came out at a time when gaming was good, and the release of a game was met with a certain optimism. Back then, there was the novelty of seeing your favorite childhood pastime turn into a video game. If you enjoyed playing cops and robbers, you had Counter-Strike. If you preferred collecting and racing miniature cars, there was Need for Speed. And if you were someone who played pretend with Barbies and dollhouses, you had The Sims. I know it's weird to think of The Sims for being this fresh and novel idea. After all, it's a game that simulates the mundane tasks of everyday life. We already eat, sleep, work, and suffer in the real world, and this game wants us to spend money to do the exact same things in front of a screen. Now that sounds like a scam. But here's the thing about The Sims. It offered something different when you compare it to its contemporaries. Back then, and even now, the typical perception of a video game was about completing levels, finishing the story, getting that high score, or beating other players. Simply put, video games were seen as linear or having a defined end. The Sims, however, is built different. This was a game about creativity. It's about building pretty houses and playing pretend in a virtual world. It's about setting up your own goals and doing whatever you wanted to achieve them. The Sims is an open-ended sandbox game, and it was my very first sandbox. It was probably yours too. However, there's more to The Sims than just being a sandbox. A game like Grand Theft Auto 3, one of its contemporaries, is an amazing sandbox and deserves its own video. And even before The Sims, you had CRPGs, tycoon games, and even this early life sim called Little Computer People that featured sandbox elements. Fun fact, Will Wright, who's the creator of The Sims, played this game and got important feedback from its designer, Rich Gold. Now going back to my point, The Sims may not be the very first sandbox, but it introduced something just as important: open-ended gameplay. The fact that the game doesn't have a traditional ending or a traditional game over screen. You see, the typical goal of a Sims playthrough is for your household to succeed, and that success is defined by you. That could mean anything from making lots of money, reaching the height of your career, mastering a skill, becoming famous, or starting your own family. Even if you do all those things in one playthrough, things go on just like normal. There is no game over screen. Unless everyone dies, of course. But what I'm trying to say here is that you decide when the game is over. You are the master of your fate, and you decide when that victory screen pops up. As a fan of the game, there's another thing I want to point out. Again, it's so easy to make fun of The Sims for having these simple gameplay loops. And that's fair, because in a nutshell, the game kinda plays like this.
Coming to bed, honey?
Yes, dear.
I understand the gameplay isn't for everyone. Despite its simple packaging though, I think The Sims is an ambitious game. Look, we may perceive our day-to-day lives as tedious and repetitive, but the things we do and some of the choices we make are complex. Now imagine the early 2000s when the internet sounded like this. And data was stored in things like these. There was a video game that dared to simulate the complexities of everyday life. For the past 2 decades, The Sims as a franchise has had the blessing and the curse of this ambition. It has the monumental task of simulating and gamifying the ever-changing complexities of real life. That's pretty interesting in my opinion, and as someone who played the game from its first to its 4th iteration, seeing The Sims change through the years was like seeing a friend grow up. It was a friend that was growing up and changing right in front of your eyes, for the better or for the worse. For me, and maybe other fans as well, part of the fun you get from The Sims is not just playing the game, but it's also that excitement you get for what's coming next. It's that desire to see how far the game can go. Now, if you ever wonder why a Sims fan would go apeshit for being able to adopt pets in the game, or visit their neighbors, or go on vacations, it's because they're experiencing the novelty of seeing their game grow up. The base game for the very first Sims was pretty amazing in its own right, but in a sense, lacked a lot of features. It was able to simulate some aspects of everyday life, but of course, not all of it. And these were things like adopting pets, visiting your neighbors, going on vacations, and a whole lot more. After you finished the base game, well, you naturally wanted more. Surprise, surprise! Months later, the newest expansion pack arrives. Here's that shiny new update that's going to give you everything you wished for. One expansion pack would be about new careers and activities for your Sims. The next one would be about furry friends and how to take care of them. And the next one would let you relax in beachside hotels and winter wonderlands. Each expansion was about making the game bigger and better. Each expansion promised growth and innovation. From then on, the cycle continues, and for each expansion pack release, there was this sort of unwritten contract between the developers and the fans. Players were happy to support the game just as long as the devs did their best to make the game better. The Sims was able to do this in its earlier years. I cannot express how jaw-dropping it was to go from a small collection of houses in The Sims 1 base game to a bigger neighborhood in The Sims 1 Unleashed, to multiple neighborhoods that could be edited in The Sims 2, to the open world neighborhood of The Sims 3. And from the looks of it, this cycle of developments and expansions seems like the golden formula for the franchise. All the developers need to do is follow it, right? Doing the exact same thing over and over again for decades never hurt anyone, right? Well, I remember being in high school when The Sims 2 was announced. My sister and I, both big fans of the first game, begged our dad to buy us a copy of the game. To convince him, we finished our homework on time and didn't complain about chores for months. Our dad relented and one day came back from the mall showing us a brand new copy of The Sims 2. Playing the game back then was loads of fun, but one thing bothered me. Despite its gorgeous graphics and new systems in place, I was asking a lot of questions. Where were the pets? Where was downtown? Where were the beaches and the winter wonderlands? Looking back, younger me was looking for content that existed in the previous game. Back then, younger me was also kinda dumb and didn't have 7 years of experience in the video game industry. The Sims 2 definitely delivered its unwritten contract to the fans by showing big leaps in innovation. It was running on a brand new engine, featured more complex systems, and had beautifully stylized 3D graphics. I didn't know that the creation of these new assets took up a lot of time, manpower, and money. Younger me may have been inconvenienced back then, but that eventually passed, as the promise of seeing expansions in the brand new Sims 2 engine would be worth it. And to be fair, most of those expansions were worth it. Years later, The Sims 3 comes out and I had these feelings of deja vu. I was bothered by missing content from The Sims 2, but this third iteration of The Sims was also great on its own. The neighborhood was an open world without any loading screens, and that was a huge deal. This was another leap in innovation after all, meaning no unwritten contracts were broken. However, something new bothered me. A little down the line, The Sims 3 was starting to introduce more expansion packs than usual, and even more alarming was the looming presence of microtransactions. Expansion packs were a thing by then, I get it. Warcraft 3 had the Frozen Throne, and Red Alert 2 had Yuri's Revenge, and both were pretty great. But microtransactions, well, these were for MMOs and online games, and The Sims was neither of those two. And as for The Sims 4, you could say I was curious about the game, but any interest I had was highly drained by a certain fatigue. By the time Sims 3 announced a third or fourth expansion pack, I was getting tired of having to pay over and over again to make the game feel more fun or complete. I was already someone who was buying my own games, and I preferred games that gave you the whole experience when you bought them. The debut of The Sims 4 was also tragic. This is because it committed its worst sin, breaking that unwritten contract. On release, the game had features that were a step down from its previous iterations. One would be the loss of that open-world neighborhood from The Sims 3. It released looking like this, and you needed to go through loading screens to visit other places. The loss of the highly praised Create a Style feature was also a big blow. The Sims 4 may offer a fair amount of customization, but it pales in comparison to what The Sims 3 was capable of. Don't get me wrong, The Sims 4 isn't all bad. Like most reviewers, I also think it's the best looking game in the series. Your Sims can now multitask as well, and that's pretty neat. Unfortunately, those features weren't enough, and The Sims 4 as a base game didn't hold a candle to previous titles. Those promises of growth and innovation, broken. And to add salt to the wound, The Sims 4 is by far the most predatory title in the series. It's filled to the brim with expansion packs and microtransactions. It's even got a battle pass system. A freaking battle pass system. Now I understand that people need to get paid. I get it. I was a dev too. But if you bombard your players with lists like these, don't be surprised if they end up feeling intimidated or gatekept. You know what I'm talking about, right EU4? Warhammer? Obviously, these DLCs and microtransactions are optional. You can choose whatever content that suits you. Great. However, with this much content to miss out on, and the amount of advertisements being blasted in your face, one can't help but feel a certain consumer fatigue. And what I think the devs failed to address is that longtime fans of The Sims have been bombarded by the same advertisements and the same calls to buy expansions over and over and over again without having the grace to acknowledge or reflect on that fact. We're tired, boss. We're tired. It's bittersweet to see this beloved series decline. I am kinda happy though, since earlier titles stand the test of time and make for good games even if you play them today. Looking back at The Sims will always be this nostalgic experience. Seeing my favorite things about the game evolve always gives me this warm, fuzzy feeling. Anyway, I think I've said enough about The Sims, and with all these details, let's recap why The Sims as a series matters. First, The Sims is a novel concept. It's arguably one of the more unique games to be released during its time. It enjoyed mainstream attention as a social life simulator and as an open-ended sandbox game. It paved the way for other games like it, while still enjoying its position on top of the ladder. Number 2, The Sims is an ambitious game. The Sims has this monumental task of turning real life into a game. Though it may appear simple, simulating the ever-changing nature of our daily lives, and doing that for years, takes a lot of time, effort, and creativity. Lastly, you can view The Sims as a window to video game development. The series has a rich history of growth. You can easily track the evolution of its design, gameplay, and aesthetics to learn about how games try to innovate. This one's personal, but I also grew up with the game, and seeing it grow up beside me evokes a certain nostalgia. And that's it! I hope this video essay shed some light on this beloved series. While writing the script, I felt like I had to defend The Sims more compared to Psychonauts. I mean, the gameplay isn't that deep. It's not for everyone, but that's okay. However, some games make their mark in video game culture despite being casual or simple. And for my next video, I'll be looking at a quote-unquote an even simpler kind of game. In fact, it's a genre that doesn't fit the traditional look and feel of a video game. And this is a genre that's near and dear to my heart.